Thank you. I'm the Director of Guidance for Port Washington Schools. Tonight we are joined with our team of high school counselors. We have so many great things to share with you this evening. This team has many, many years of college admissions experience among them. However, they continue to learn and grow as the trends learn and grow and change. I'm just going to ask for a quick show of hands. How many of you are junior parents for the first time? Almost all of you. Okay, that's fantastic. We also have a live stream going, so we do see and hear you out there. And possibly we have some returning parents. Anybody here who's done this before? Okay, so a few of you as well. Anybody here who's done it before earlier than 4 years ago? Okay. So some things may have changed, some things may have stayed the same, yes. And we're going to get into all of that this evening. There will be some time at the end for questions, and at 7:30, please stay for the presentation by Mr. Tom Ehlers, who is the owner of Method Eye, and he is the fabulous, more than just a test prep company. He's extremely knowledgeable, and I think you will find his presentation rewarding. So, before we get started, you could just take away two things. I promise you, you will survive the process. In case any of you are concerned about that, we have some veterans here who can tell you that you will get through this. Your counselors and I are all here for you, so please do trust the process, even though you will have many, many questions throughout, and we are all here to help and support you. But we ask that we work together in partnership and trust the process. So I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Galdanetz, who's going to give a brief introduction and just a review of graduation requirements.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm just going to go over briefly in terms of what the difference is between an advanced Regents diploma and a Regents diploma. So as you can see behind me, in terms of credits, your student is still going to need to have 22.5 credits. The only difference would be in terms of how they accumulate their credits. It would be through the world language for an advanced Regents diploma. So as you see behind me, they would need 3 credits in a world language and only 1.5 elective credits, whereas a Regents diploma, they would only need 3.5 electives and 1 credit in a world language. The next slide is going to indicate the difference between the two diplomas in terms of the amount of Regents that they would need to take. For an advanced Regents diploma, they would need to take 8 exams, 8 Regents, and 1 exam known as a flat speed checkpoint. In regards to a Regents diploma, they would need to pass 5 Regents, and they would need to, for both, they would need to either have a 65 or above or an exemption. If you have any additional questions, I would definitely urge you to set an appointment with your counselor, which we'll be discussing in terms of junior conferences in the next upcoming slides. I'm going to hand over the mic to Ms. Cerny.
So do you see this? We do not want you to look like this. This is what we're totally going to avoid. So switch the slides so I know what. Okay. So my job is to explain to you about college admissions. Now, colleges tell us whether they accept early decision, and I'm going to explain this to you all in a minute, whether they accept early decision applications, early action, rolling, and regular. We don't have the choice. So whatever a college tells us, whatever they offer us, we look at it and we decide amongst the family individually what's going to be best for your child. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is early decision 1 and 2. So early decision is a binding contract. That means if you decide that your child wants to go to one particular college for sure, and really you have to ask a lot of questions in terms of that, then you can go early decision, but it's binding. So if the college says yes to your child, they have to go. It is a legal contract. Now, it happens that there are early decision 1 and early decision 2, but like I said earlier, colleges will tell us not very many colleges have early decision 2. But when we make the plan at our individual junior conferences that you're going to start signing up for, we will talk individually about your child, what the best plan is. And sometimes early decision 2 is the way to go. But again, it's binding. So we have to look at all that. The next thing is early action. We love early action because it has an early deadline. Early decision, early action, both are due November 1st or November 15th. Now, the southern schools are starting to have us have everything ready by October 15th. So as you know, the Common App opens in the summer, August 1st, so you have to really get everything together pretty quickly to be able to make these early deadlines. However, the bonus is that with early decision and early action, most times we hear the decision for your child before Christmas and winter break. So that's like a bonus. But early action is wonderful because it's not binding. So your child can opt to apply to one early decision school because you can never apply to more than one. But if they want to, they can apply to 6 early action schools. And we will hear all those decisions before Christmas break. As a matter of fact, this week, starting to be mid-December, and the current seniors are going to be hearing, and everybody is getting nervous. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. The next thing is regular decision. That just means that the college gives the outside date that they'll accept the applications, and that's usually around January 1st. So if your child does have a couple of early action schools, maybe one early decision school, but has a balance of regular decision, what's good about that is they have all that time, even through mid-December, before they have to get that application out. So as far as timing goes, we all think that having a regular application is good as well. The next one is rolling. That's my favorite. So rolling admission has to do with large state schools. Places like Indiana, University of Pittsburgh, just yell out a couple. Alabama, yes, so these large state schools, they have something called rolling. Now what's interesting, especially about the colleges in the South, they start and encourage applications to come in by August 1st. And that's a little early for us, but you know, colleges in the South start a whole month earlier than we do. Now we don't have to feel the pressure because a lot of the colleges in the South are really looking for students who live in the Northeast to come to their schools. So they can wait a month or so for our application. But when it comes to rolling, it just means if you want to hear from a college on the early side and it not be binding, if your child can get their application together for, let's say, Colorado Boulder, Indiana, or Pitt, within the month of September, and all the documents that are necessary are actually received by the college by the end of September, they will hear sometimes within 3 days, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and they actually have a college in their back pocket that is not binding, so it's just an option for them to think about for the whole year until May 1st. So rolling, remember that word, that's really important. And the only one that's not here is restricted early action. I don't want to confuse anybody because it's just a very few colleges like Yale and Princeton have that kind of admission. Not going to go into details. You'll find out when it's appropriate from your capital counselors. What's next? Am I doing this? Okay. So you have to find the right match. So what happens is all of us counselors meet with you for individual junior conferences. What's going to happen is you're going to fill out paperwork, including a parent brag sheet, and we just want you to tell stories and interesting information about your child that we might not know, seeing them just in school. There's a student brag sheet, and we have to encourage the kids to fill it out, and it's not like bragging, it's just really telling us things about themselves that we really need to hear. The other thing is the college worksheet. Now the worksheet is very important because it asks you for like geographic limitations. So if you don't want your child to go to California or say Hawaii, you don't put that. If Northeast is good, if South is good, you would check that out. So you will see that worksheet. And once we have that, then we're prepared to make a preliminary list of colleges for each of your children that would be very, very individual. So this is really telling us what we have to think about. Maybe your child wants a large school. Maybe a small school is appropriate for your child. We have to really think.
Sorry.
Did I do that?
No, I did. It's okay.
Somebody else did it, not me. Anyway, so we're talking about the fact, oh, it sounds very loud to me now. Is it horrible
Yes,
for everybody?
keep going.
It's okay now? Anyway, so it says to be realistic. I think the most important thing to remember is that the preliminary list of colleges, we all try to give about 20 schools on the list. They're really just schools to start to research. As you go through the schools, you're going to start to go through websites and you're going to realize this school has really great majors and we're interested in that. And that school has a beautiful campus and we want a campus experience. So as you start to research the schools on your preliminary list, the real schools that you'll be applying to will emerge. And see, these are some of the things that we want to talk about. If you can't visit a college, definitely go on the websites of the colleges from your preliminary list and go on virtual tours. All these things, and if you have any questions going forward, all of your counselors are available to you. We're only a phone call away or an email away. Anything else? Okay, who's next? This is very loud now, you can see, that's weird, yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori Jacobson, one of the counselors. Thank you so much for being here this evening. The first thing I want to say before I go on to my couple of slides, I'm going to go over here, so I'm right. The first thing I want to say is just to reiterate what Ms. Cerny and Ms. Director said. This can be an overwhelming process, but it doesn't have to be that overwhelming. Some of your heads might be spinning already so far with information, and you might feel overwhelmed by the end of this presentation, but rest assured we are here to help you throughout this entire process. A lot of this will make more sense. It's still very early. So a lot of the stuff you're going to hear about in the coming months. We're doing a similar presentation next September. We'll be meeting for junior college conferences soon enough, so don't worry, there are going to be many more opportunities to learn this stuff, and you're going to become pros. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how do I learn about different colleges. Now is really the time in the coming months to start doing your research. I really do believe, as Ms. Cerny said, I really do believe that there's a college out there for everybody. You really need to know your child, their strengths, their weaknesses, their personalities, because there's over 3,000 colleges in the country, and there is definitely more than one right fit for students. So the first thing that we really advise you to do, and a lot of people tend to start visiting campuses, usually, I'm gonna say in like March and April. So the first thing that it's good to do is go on campus visits, okay? Very often, as we know from if we went to school or in any situation where we had to make a choice, you kind of get that feeling when you step on a campus. So visiting a campus while school is in session, where you get to, especially in the nicer weather, that you hope it's going to be nice the day that you visit, really gives the student and the families an idea as to whether or not he or she can see himself at that campus. So you'll see the students outside. You can also sit in on a class. So campus tours are really, really important. We don't expect you to go visit every single school that you intend on applying to, but really getting a feel, maybe visiting a city school, a suburban school, a rural area, just to get a feel for what you do want and what you don't want. So campus visits are really important. We are very good resources. We've been doing this a long time, and as Ms. Director alluded to before, we keep up with the trends and the changes that are going on, so please utilize us. We know that people hire private counselors, and that's totally fine if that's what works for your family, but just know that for those of you who do not want to use that route, we are here for you to help you throughout this process. Another way to learn about different colleges is through some search engines. In addition to the internet searches, you can use Naviance. A lot of you have gone onto Naviance before, a lot of you haven't. If you need your password, every parent and guardian has their own password. If you do not have yours, when we meet with you during individual junior conferences, we will be happy to give you your password. But your child has an Naviance account that he or she can go on to at any time, and there's a lot of different functions of Naviance. We'll really be using it at the beginning of the senior year when your child is applying to colleges, but for now it's a great resource to do college searches. And there's a great tool on there which is great and not so great, but it's the scattergram. Has anybody ever seen the scattergram? Okay, so basically it allows the student to put in his or her GPA, and it sort of tells you in a chart which students have applied there in the past with that similar GPA, and did they get into that particular college. So it's a fun tool, but take it with a grain of salt. It's not the end all be all. So there's lots of different things you could do on Naviance. In addition to that, you can do college searches, you could do virtual tours, you could build a resume. There's so many great features on it. There's going to be a few college fairs in the coming months, in addition to our annual college consortium, which will be on March 29th. We have the NACAC Long Island Fair, we have the NCEA Fair. In the fall, for those of you who have had children graduate from here before, we have rep visits and mini fairs, and those take place in September, October, and the beginning of November of their senior year. Okay, and those are great opportunities for the kids. And again, this is something we'll remind you throughout the year, and also when we meet with you next September, when your children are seniors, because we will be doing lots of reminding. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is Naviance Student. I know I mentioned it a little bit before. For those of you who've had older children, the login information is slightly different than it used to be. Right now, the Port Washington School District has acquired something called Clever, and the students have to log in through Clever, which is linked to their PortNet account. Okay, parents can't go on through Clever. Parents go on through actual Naviance. So the parents are going to use the username and password to view the student's account. As I mentioned before, if you don't have that information, we'll happily give it to you during your junior conference. Okay, and again, it's an up-to-date tool for looking at college admissions data and the stuff about teacher recommendations and everything else like that. I don't want to overwhelm you anymore. That stuff you don't have to worry about for several months, and we will remind you to do that. And the last thing I'm going to be speaking about is factors in college admissions decisions. One of the misconceptions in college admissions is everybody is so focused on what their actual GPA is. I want to debunk that right now as you're sitting here. While the GPA is important, what colleges are really looking at first and foremost is the strength of the student's curriculum. Okay? They are looking at your child in the context of their school. Okay? Not every school has 30 AP classes like we do. Some schools have more, most have a lot less. So they're looking at your child in the context of his or her school. So strength of curriculum. What classes are available at Schreiber, and is your child taking advantage of those classes? They're also looking at grades in those courses, right? So obviously, rather than focusing on the actual GPA, we always encourage our students to just get the best grade that they can possibly get in that particular class. They're also looking at the essay or the writing sample. The essay, especially over the past couple of years, has become a more integral part of the application, especially with test optional, which we'll talk about in a little while. But the essay is a really important part of the application. There will be many opportunities to talk about essay topics and what to do with the essay. We'll be offering a college essay workshop in May. We'll talk about this more in depth at your individual junior conference. Again, I don't want to overwhelm you, but the essay is an important part. They're also looking at extracurricular activities, whether it's community service, volunteer work, clubs, athletics, music, Employment, that's a big thing also, that all falls under the category of extracurricular activities. They're also looking at the counselor recommendation. So we encourage you to encourage your kids to come in, allow us to get to know them more than hopefully we already do, and the better we know them, the more in-depth their recommendation is going to be. So counselor recommendation, teacher recommendation, and students' demonstrated interest. A lot of schools do not track demonstrated interest. It really depends on the individual school. And they might also look at standardized test scores. As I'm sure a lot of you may know already, a lot of schools have gone test optional since COVID. There was a list of test optional schools prior to that, but a lot more schools are still continuing to be test optional through next year also. So we're waiting to find out. Probably the next couple of months, we'll find out for sure which schools will continue to be test optional. But a lot of schools, if your child does well on the SAT and the ACT, then they'll want to submit those scores because it could only enhance their application. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lorge.
Hello, my name is Joel Lorge. I'm one of the guidance counselors here. I'm going to be covering a couple of different areas. One area that I'm going to be covering is the components of, or the types of application and components of the application. So most colleges that kids apply to will use something called a common application. The common application, unlike when most of us applied to college, when each college you applied to, you had to get the application, fill it out, and send it in. Now there's a common application that you can fill out that would be applicable to, I don't know exactly how many are on there, but it's the vast majority of colleges right now are on the common application. So that makes life really easy for kids now because they basically just have to fill out this application one time, and then each individual college will have a little section for themselves called the supplement or questions that you would add to the main part of the Common App. So that supplement or those specific college questions, along with the Common Application, will make up a completed application for the student. So that's the Common Application, and you'll be hearing a lot about that. That's probably, without a doubt, by far, the most popular way that kids will apply to college. If kids are applying to a City University of New York College, or Hunter College, Baruch, any of the New York City, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, any city school, they have their own separate application. That's the CUNY application. State universities like Binghamton, Geneseo, Oneonta, there is a SUNY application that SUNY provides, but SUNY is also on the common application. So there's really no reason, and in fact, I would highly recommend, and I think we all agree, that if you're applying to a SUNY, use the common application, don't use the SUNY application, because it's going to create a lot more work for no real benefit to the student. So use the Common App whenever possible. There are some colleges out there that don't prescribe to any of these common applications or general, and they may have their own college-specific application where you just go onto the college's website and you apply through their website, and that's the only way to apply to that particular school. There are some of them like that, so you'll just have to check, and you don't have to worry about too much of this right now, because once you have a list of colleges that you're actually applying to, then you'll figure out which ones, use the Common App, which ones have their own institutional application, or whatever, however they want you to apply. So as Mrs. Jacobson said, for SATs and ACTs, that's an important component of the application. Just something you might want to just kind of store in the back of your head would be, that is one element of the application that you must go and send on your own. So if you're an SAT tester, then you would have to go onto collegeboard.com when the time comes, and it's not right now, so I'm not sure if you remember this down the road, but it's just something just to say, just kind of store away, is that you have to make sure that you go on to the official testing website and send your scores from that official testing website, whether that be SATs from collegeboard.com or ACTs from ACT.org. Obviously, your high school transcript is going to be the most important singular piece of information that the colleges are going to use to determine eligibility at the school. Those are obviously your grades of the courses that you've taken. Letters of recommendation will come from several different places. Some you'll have choice on, some you don't. Every single student will get a letter of recommendation from their guidance counselor. That is generally required by all schools. And then most schools require at least one teacher letter of recommendation. Some may require more than one, some may require two, some may not require them at all. But it's definitely something to be prepared for, because if a student is applying to, 10, 15 schools, then it's almost 100% guaranteed that at least some of those schools are going to want at least a teacher letter of recommendation from someone. So students should start to, and you should start talking to your kids a little bit about, hey, the guidance counselors last night were talking a little bit about these letters of recommendation. Who do you think you might ask? Do you have any idea about what teacher you think you might ask? That's a good conversation to start having with your kids now, because that's a tough one for kids. It's first of all, it's a very intimidating process for kids, because they've spent their entire lives getting assignments from teachers, and now they're going to a teacher asking them to kind of do something for them, and then checking in with them to make sure that they've met deadlines. It's kind of like the role has been reversed on the teachers, so that's not super comfortable for a lot of kids. So I tell kids all the time, it's very well understood by the teachers that this is something that they expect that you're going to need to do, which is check in on them to make sure that they're meeting your deadline now. So some kids like that, I guess. Every student is going to be writing an essay. So the Common Application has a page where you will have to write a 650-word essay. So the Common Application gives 6 options for students. They choose one of the 6 options. The last choice is usually topic of your choice, so they give you carte blanche in case you can't fit what you want to write into one of the other choices. Often there are things such as, what's something you've overcome, what's something that's influenced you, things like that. Things you might expect college will give you options to write about. But it's important. This is probably, from my experience, in terms of the barrier to applying, the thing that stresses kids out the most, the thing that's the most difficult part of the application is, without a doubt, the essay. 90% of the application that they're sending is information, biographical information, where you live, who your parents are, who your siblings are, your grades are your grades, these kinds of things. The essay is really the last thing that kids can really craft to make their application stronger. So that's something also, that's a conversation to maybe start talking to your kids about, hey, have you thought maybe at all about what you might write this essay about? And what I advise people is, think about what the most compelling aspect of who you are is. That's a tough thing for a lot of kids. Most kids look at themselves like, nothing. I'm a kid. I'm a regular kid. What do you mean? But think about it. Everybody's got something that makes them a little bit more unique, makes them a little bit, maybe they're strong in something particular. They have an interest in something particular. Think about what that most interesting part of who they are is, and maybe that's a good place to start when it comes to thinking about what to write your essay. And then your list of extracurricular activities is obviously an important thing. Obviously, high school is a multi-lane highway. One lane is your grades. That's awesome. You have to have good grades, you want to have good grades, all that good stuff. But one of the other very important lanes is the extracurricular activities, because a lot of kids have good grades. So the question may come down to, well, what else have you done to make us pick you versus another kid? And that's, again, another thing you might talk to your kids. Right now, we're about halfway through junior year. So it's not too late now to talk to your kids who feel like their extracurricular resumes are a little not so great. Now's the time to start saying, all right, let's do some stuff now, between now and the end of the year, some volunteer work, some whatever. Join a couple of clubs, get onto a couple of teams, or whatever it is that they want to do. But now's a good time to start evaluating what your list of activities looks like, because if you do that next year at this time, or even in the fall, it's kind of too late. It's even late now, but it's not too late now. Now is still a time when you can still build your extracurricular resume. So that would be something, again, I would talk to my children about as well. So the next slide, what your transcript shows, will show the courses that you've taken. Obviously the growth and the trend of your grades since freshman year, the consistency of the grades that you have, the upward progression, or the downward progression, whichever progression way that might be. And sometimes there's a good reason for things. The application, by the way, gives you an opportunity to talk about things that may have caused you to have a bad semester. So that's another story that we can talk about if that's the case for some folks. Your cumulative GPA, which is a number that's based on the grades that you've earned. Your GPA, your grade point average. It'll show the courses that you're taking in senior year. That's an important thing because colleges do want to see that kids are still picking coursework commensurate with their level. Every kid doesn't have to take 6 AP classes, okay? 5 AP classes. Most kids don't do that, all right? A lot of kids do take an AP here or there. There are some kids who do take, a million AP classes, but I would caution everyone here, a kid does not have to take 5 AP classes in any year of high school, okay? It's not a necessary thing. However, I do understand that, the idea of taking a heavy course load is important to a lot of folks, but it's not, you can still go to college and not take 6 AP classes. Your mid-year grades will go to the colleges after, the second quarter of senior year. So what I tell kids is that your grades may still come into factor for admissions definitely through the second quarter of senior year. Obviously third and fourth quarter, you don't want them to totally take their foot off the gas completely, but by that point, decisions will be made. It would take a lot, it's not possible, but it would take a lot for a college to reverse their decision after making a decision. So you don't want to go from being like, a kid who gets all A's and in the third and fourth quarter get like all D's and F's, obviously. But if your kid gets all A's and in the third and fourth quarter they get a couple of B's, I think that's okay. That's not gonna end anybody. But I think you understand what I'm saying. And then at the end of the year, you'll get your final GPA. That'll have your final everything that you'll take and have put away and have for any future use that you might need. So that's your transcript. And then, this next slide is just a little bit of a, it's a little bit of a table just to demonstrate what a GPA, where that kind of falls. We do not rank our students. That is on purpose. I personally really like the idea that we don't rank students. We don't pit them against each other. What number are you, what number are you, what number are you? But what we do is give them a distribution of averages so that the colleges can understand where your child sits in their class. So, this would tell you that if you have a 5.0 or higher, that represents 6% of this year's class, which is a lot. That's actually a pretty high number. If you have a 4.5 to a 4.99, that represents 20% of the class. So that line, including the 5.0 line, is why that's 26%, 20 plus 6. So 26% of the class. So the top quarter of the class is a 4.5 or higher. 4.0 to 4.59 is another 20%. So basically, about 50% of the class is at a 4.0 or better, around 46%, and so on and so on. So that's what that means. Which is a little frustrating sometimes because kids do really well here, and sometimes they can do really well, get a lot of A's and B's, and then all of a sudden they look and they say, oh boy, I'm still not really even in the top of my class, even though I have mostly A's and B's. And that may be the case, but I wouldn't worry about it at all. Every single one of your kids is going to go to a great school. We're going to find the right schools for them to apply to and help them and help you guys. And we're going to have individual meetings with each and every one of you to kind of get a sense of what you want. And we'll work from there. So I will now turn over this microphone to Ms. Vanessa Garcia. And I look forward to meeting with you all.
Hi everyone, I'm Ms. Garcia. I'm just going to speak about the standardized testing, SAT and ACT. As it was mentioned before, many schools will continue to be test optional for next year. However, some other colleges have not decided yet what stance they will take for fall of 2024. We urge everyone to please check each college website for up-to-date information as far as the requirements. Students that want to super score. Students must submit every test they want to be considered if they want to super score their exam. There's a website called fairtest.org. If you go to that website, you will see a list of all the colleges in the United States that are test optional. However, you do just want to use that as a point of reference. It's always better to go directly to the college website for the most up-to-date information because many times things can change overnight and fairtest.org does not get updated immediately. For students that have testing accommodations, a 504, an IEP, please touch base with your school counselor about submitting the necessary forms to College Board and ACT. The forms are on the school website, but if you need assistance with that, you can reach out to me or reach out to your child's school counselor to access the necessary paperwork. On to the next slide. Here you will see some differences between the SAT and ACT. As you can see for SAT, the website is collegeboard.org. You do have to register for the exam on this website. It's 154 questions in 3 hours. It's more based on critical and analytical thinking, so the students are expected to spend more time per question. There are 3 sections: reading, math, writing, and language. As far as ACT, you'll see the website, act.org. It's a little bit more fast-paced. It's 215 questions in just under 3 hours, and there are 4 different sections: English, math, reading, and science. Many students took the PSATs earlier in the school year. If you haven't seen those results yet, they are on collegeboard.org. Your child should be able to log on to their College Board account and see their score report. Next slide, please. Here we have some dates for both the SAT and ACT. The dates that say SCH in parentheses are dates that we're offering the exam here at Schreiber High School. We're also offering the ACT February 11th and April 15th here at the high school. Also, the March 11th ACT will be offered here as well. We haven't received confirmation dates for the exams in the fall as far as whether or not they will be offered here at the high school, but you can check our website just to make sure. And next, I will be passing the mic to Ms. Debbie Struck.
Good evening, everyone. All right, I'm going to talk about some of the components of the application. The first one being co-curriculars. And this is everything your child does outside of the classroom. It's clubs, it's part-time work, it's volunteer, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, summer classes, any clubs that they're part of, with especially if they have leadership positions, athletics, music, if they're part of NYSSMA. These are all components of the application that help your students stand out and shine. So it really is important that students try to get involved with at least one something outside of the classroom. If they have to work, that takes precedence over a lot of other things, but they really should have something that they involve themselves with outside of the classroom. And that we emphasize quality over quantity. A student should not be involved in 25 activities because they think that will help them to get into college. It's better they're involved in a few things and they are consistent and maybe move up in that to have a leadership position. All right, the college essay. It has been discussed. It will be discussed a lot. It will be discussed in our junior conferences. It will be discussed in the essay writing workshop we have in the fall. It is in the spring. It is very, very important because the application for college is basic information from the student, demographic information, along with the transcript, maybe test scores. The college essay is the one place where the student has a chance to use their voice, their personal voice. So it should be creative, in the student's voice, and student voice is important. A college admissions officer who is reading the application can tell an essay written by a 17-year-old versus one that's written by a 40-year-old. They know. It is important that the student get it checked. Have an English teacher check it. We as counselors love to read the essays, but it has to be in their voice. Personal, engaging, authentic, and it is a very, very important part of the Common Application and something students should take seriously. Also, some colleges have a supplemental essay, and those they want to make sure that they keep up with as they start the application. Some schools want to know why this particular school, why this particular major. They may have a question that just gets the student thinking, and it's usually a much shorter essay. Typically, it's about 250 words versus the 650 for the Common Application essay. And do not wait for the last minute. The summer is a perfect time to work on the college essay so that it's really just ready to be proofread when the student starts senior year. This here is a list of, it's hard to read, but the Common Essay prompts for this year. And you can find that out on if you go on the common.app.org website, you can see, but it has, for example, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful, they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. There are different, talk about accomplishments, reflect on something or someone that has made you happy or thankful. They really think, most of them are think essays. So it's something the students should spend time on, find one that's right for them. If they're not sure what to write, the counselors here are happy to help them with figuring out what to write. All right. Now I've got Ms. Jessica Ludwig here to talk.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out. Here to talk a little bit about letters of recommendation. So there are some, general rules about letters of recommendation. It's preferred a junior year teacher, so a teacher from this current year, unless you have some special connection or your child has some special connection in the past, absolutely have that conversation with the counselor because there definitely are some exceptions, but for the general rule, a junior year teacher because it's closer to the year that they're entering college. So if you talk about your child and the teacher's talking about the child in the freshman year, the school might be like, well, who are they are now? You know, does that really reflect who the child was in ninth grade, who they are as they're entering college? So that's kind of the reasoning why junior year is definitely preferred. All in-house Schreiber teachers are invited through Naviance. So there's that word again, Naviance. You're going to be hearing a lot of it. But Naviance is the way our teacher letters will send through to the colleges, okay? It kind of connects. It's the hub that connects Schreiber with the colleges that you're going to. The school counselor letter, for the most part, every college does want a counselor letter. Again, those forms that we talked about, they're going to be submitted. Those will help kind of with them, get an idea of what your child wants. It'll get an idea of kind of what things are important to them. All those forms that are going to be posted for your child to kind of answer questions about, and you get to answer about, will help to form that letter. A special talent, if your child does have something additional that they want to send to a school, maybe they've worked for a really, really long time and they have a really good connection with the employer. Maybe they've done something over the summer and they volunteered somewhere. Those are all what's called like special talents or a music coach, all those kind of things. If they're not in Schreiber, then they get invited through what's called back to the application on the Common App, okay? So Naviance is all in-house Schreiber people. The counselor, the teachers get through Schreiber, through Naviance. Anybody outside, a special talent will get invited through the Common App. Just check your schools once your child has their list of schools, because all schools have different requirements. Some will want one teacher letter, some will want two, some will want none. Sometimes you're applying to like a special program. For example, say you're interested in engineering your child, they might specifically want a math teacher. Some won't include elective teachers. So every college kind of has their own rules. But for the most part, if you kind of stick to junior year and you try to stick to the main subjects, unless you try to an art school or music school, those are different conversations. All those individual conversations are going to handle at your junior conference, which will be coming up in the near future. So, what happens next, right? This is my favorite time because this is when we get to see everybody. So what happens next? Your child is going to figure out tomorrow, if they haven't already, how to join their counselor's junior classroom, junior Google Classroom. Many of the kids are on it already, but if not, they'll get the codes again tomorrow in their assembly. We'll talk again, we'll show them the forms, they'll all be posted on the Google Classroom, the brag sheet for the student and the parent, and that college planning workshop, worksheet that Ms. Cerny talked about earlier, location, size of school, those kind of questions. As soon as those packets are completed, they will be submitted right through Google Classroom, and then parents and students will be able to sign up for a junior conference. All students should absolutely have an individual appointment with their counselor to talk about future plans after they leave Schreiber. Parents are definitely welcome to these meetings. We would love to have you here, but we also understand that, you know, there's other things going on during the day. You might not be able to attend. People have work, they have other childcare issues, things like that going on. That's absolutely fine. You are welcome to attend if you can. But if not, just please make sure your child does schedule that individual appointment. Because these presentations and the presentation tomorrow are general rules and general ideas for everybody. But then when you have the individual appointment, it'll really be more specific to your child. The calendar will be up and running very shortly. You'll get a link and you'll be able to sign up. And that is what happens next. Now I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Sussman to talk about preparing for the next steps.
Hello everyone, my name is Corey Sussman. I'm in for Ms. Rafferty. Pleasure to meet you all. So basically the last slide of the night is information about preparing the next step. It's going to reiterate a lot of the stuff we've discussed already tonight. Familiar yourself with Naviance. Naviance is a tool for our parents and for our students. It really gets you into the deep dive into the college process, doing virtual college tours, understanding the colleges, and getting onto those websites. Support, not stress. Us counselors, we're all here for you. We're here for the student, we're here for the parents, we're here for the guardians. Whoever's assisting the student, we're here for you. We want to be there to support you. Call us, email us, come and make an appointment. We're here for you. So remember that, please. Students and parents should make sure they keep a record, the co-curricular transcript. Great Resume tool is on Naviance. You could build that co-curricular transcript on Naviance and keep a great record. I recommend having your student maybe this weekend or in the future just start remembering what they did in 9th grade, what they did in 10th grade, what they're doing now in 11th grade, inside and outside of the classroom. The nature of the relationships and becoming comfortable with the teacher now. So this, once again, the letters of recommendation. We recommend that your student goes to their teachers, think about who they want to ask to get those letters of recommendations, building those relationships now so it doesn't come to as a shocker for that teacher in September or October when you're rushing to get that November 1st deadline for early decision. Make sure you're getting that information to those teachers, building those relationships, making sure they know who you are inside and outside the classroom so they can really build you up in the college recommendation. And have honest conversations with your student. This is really important. Make sure that you're discussing with them your finances, what you can afford, where you can afford, where you prefer for them to go to college, not just where they want to go, but as a family, it has to be a discussion that you have as a whole group. The student and you may be on different pages, so it's really important to have that discussion where the student would love to go, what's realistic for them to go within your means as a family, and have a really good understanding of what they really want and how you can make that happen, how we can all make that happen. Student college parent conferences are coming up. We just discussed that. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to schedule that meeting with your counselor. And finally, encourage your student to check in with us. We're here every day. So if the school's open, we're here. Have them come and check in with us. Ask them, have questions for us. Make sure the student knows that we're here. That we're here for you. We're here for everyone that's part of this. We're a family, and we want to be here to assist you in every aspect of the way. And now I will turn this over to our director, Roy Director.
Thank you, Mr. Sussman. Thank you, everybody. How are we doing? Okay, great. I love the enthusiasm. Thank you. So you're going to see a presentation from Mr. Ehlers in just a moment. But before that, I'm going to open it up. I think we have a minute or two for some questions. Does anybody have any burning questions about what you just heard? Yes. That's a great question. So the question was, the Common App opens up on August 1st. When do the counselors become available? So first of all, the reason for August 1st is because schools in the South, I think might have been Ms. Cerny who said that schools in the South open up on August 1st. So we come back right around Labor Day, so we've got a whole month to catch up. So I'm glad you brought that up because even though it opens up August 1st and you have the opportunity, your child has the opportunity to get started, to put in some of the beginning information, the counselors are not back until the end of August. We will be hosting a workshop for seniors every year, the third Wednesday of August. I think it's the 16th. There's a little teaser about this in a second. We'll do a workshop on the Common Application for those students who have already started. We do have students that get started at the beginning of the year, and they don't need to submit it, but we can answer questions such as how to match, what does this section mean, what does that section mean. Just to give you a little bit about our timeline with this, so counselors come back at the end of August. Right before that, so in between that workshop and the counselors returning, a transcript will become available for you and your student to view, their final transcript as of the end of junior year, so that they can see, is everything looking good? Are there any errors? Maybe there was a grade that, for whatever reason, doesn't seem correct. We want you and your student to review that transcript before we're sending it out to the schools. There are many other reports that have to get filled out on our end, so this kind of goes back to that, please trust the process. We have multiple reports. I think Ms. Jacobson wants to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing about the Common App. Your child can actually access the Common App in the spring.
Yes.
great, thank you.
Yes.
So nothing can be submitted. What will happen on August 1st is that everything that was inputted into the common application will roll over. So if, let's say, the student wants to get a head start in the spring and they have questions, they can always meet us in the spring. But everything will roll over to the class of 2024 come August 1st.
Thank you. So yes, they can do that, or they can wait. I also want to address, there might be some of you out here who you're here and you want the information and you're ready and you're ready and you're ready, and your child may not be in the same place that you are right now, and that's completely okay too. I had one of each. One was really gung-ho, the other one we kind of had to drag along. So please know that we're here to answer your questions too. Every student is in a different place with this. Some are really, they're ready to go. Some of them are going to need some guidance from you and from their counselor. And some of them, as we get more towards the summer, will really just need to sort of, engage further in the conversation. So if you are here and your child is not quite where you are yet, it's okay. One other thing I wanted to bring out as everybody was talking, just a little stat to give you a perspective of what our students are doing. So right now, the class of 2023, 81% of students in the class of 2023 have submitted college applications at this point. So we're talking about a class of approximately 405. So think about that number, that's a great deal. And when we were talking about the different types of decisions, early, regular, early decision, early action, most of our students do apply early. Again, for the student that wants to apply regular, that's okay too. Any other questions? Yes.
On the ACT, I'm just curious if the overall guidance philosophy. You really well, you really poorly, don't. What are your methods?
Great question. So we are encouraging families to look at the statistics, and we will help you along where to find this. Look at the last 3 or 4 years. We want you to look at what the middle 50% of where students were accepted, the upper 50%, the upper 25%, and I think Mr. Ehlers is going to get a little bit more involved in this conversation, because the colleges, just because they say optional, if you have the opportunity to take it, please do. But if you're not so sure, and if your student scores are maybe in the lower 25%, have a conversation with your counselor. They can let you know where the trends are for those schools and whether or not you may want to think about not submitting them. But again, they can speak to that when your student has some data to talk about. I saw another hand somewhere in the back. Hi.
In terms of the prompts for the essays, are they the same year to year, or do they change?
I think this is the 3rd year of the same prompts, so, what's that? 7th, 8th year, yes, it's been a few years, so I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed the same again. We haven't heard, usually by now, we would hear if College Board, if Common App was changing the questions. And I think that question about write anything is always going to be there, so. Any other questions? Yes? This current class is about 375. I just looked at it today. It's somewhere, it's a bit under 400. Any other questions? Yes? Excellent question, especially when your students were freshmen, like you said, sophomores. So the question was, how are students impacted by COVID with extracurriculars, and what can they do to explain that? So every college asks the question, it's part of the supplemental questions, how were you impacted? If your child feels that that was something that needs to be spoken about or explained, please do. Talk about how maybe they pursued opportunities. Talk about maybe your student was creative and thought outside the box. Talk about that as well. we've been back now, or in some capacity, going on, well, this is our real first official full year back. So I think things that happened in the last year or two would weigh heavily. So you can explain that, and if you have real specific questions about it, please speak to your counselor. Yes?
Is there an average number of applications that the children are doing now, and is it 5, 10?
Such a great question. Question was, is there an average number of applications that students are doing now? So the counselors will provide, as was stated, some schools initially to look at. I personally believe that students can really apply to 5 or 6 schools and have a balanced list. So I like to tell parents and students, have a balanced list of schools. So what does that mean? Schools that are maybe their criteria, maybe the school's a bit above, so a reach school. The bulk of the schools are target schools, or schools where they have a good chance of getting in. And again, there are lots of factors that go into it. And then have some likely schools in there. But a likely school is never likely if it's a school that your student won't even set foot on the campus. So be sure that it's really likely. And we're also talking about financial fit. It's a big factor in this as the cost skyrockets.
I think that she also wants to know average. I would say about 15. I said that this year I think that there were a couple of kids that were as low as 5, but there's also always as many
What
as
was
20.
it before COVID, before the no test requirement? Is it a big difference?
I think
I think 10, and I'm just gonna, I know you asked for an average, but I'm gonna give you my opinion, because I think that, tell your students, the more they apply, and let's leave out the large out-of-state publics, but for every school, they're writing a supplemental essay. Does your student really want to write 15 to 20 supplemental essays? And maybe some do, but maybe some really don't. So think about that. And there's also a cost associated with each one. So again, it's a family decision about what is your budget for college applications? What is the expectation? So, and I think Ms. Cerny just said about 15, 10 to 12 prior. And I see a hand in the back.
Hi. When does the transcript actually get sent, especially if you're not back till September and some of those southern schools have earlier deadlines?
So as Ms. Cerny had pointed out earlier, those southern schools are rolling admissions. We're going to work on sending something what we all saw as a trend that's become a lot of movement behind this trend this year, to the point where the New York Times even picked up on it. You might have seen the article about the allure of these southern institutions. Part of it had to do with COVID. Those schools were in person and rolling throughout, where many of us up here, students were masked or virtual or both. So we send, by the end of September, our first transcripts are going out the door. That is prior to any college deadline. Rolling admissions is exactly that. So please, if I can impose this upon you, just trust that we will get it out. Everything comes in, we're processing hundreds and thousands of applications during that month. We have a process that we'll speak to more about at the senior night that's going to come up in September, and we'll talk to you about what that looks like. The applications get sent out. In addition to the transcripts and the counselor letters, there are other reports that we're filling out and we're submitting. So all of this is kind of happening behind the scenes. So I would say roughly, usually that last week in September is when they're being sent out, as long as your student has provided us with the documents that we need to get the applications out.
We're also
Yes.
seeing a lot of schools that are relying on self-report of the student.
Yes.
So they're not even waiting for their official transcript. The kids are reporting their own scores and self-reporting, especially some of these southern schools that are looking to get their own jump start on things. They're actually accepting kids without the official transcript. And then the official transcript comes just to kind of verify they're telling the truth, but they're really going on just the
That's a great point, and we'll provide more information about that. One other thing just to keep in mind, so we here do not give out your students' information. We're not sending it to the colleges. I'm not talking about transcripts, I'm talking about all of the lovely mailings and emails that you're getting and your students are getting. The minute your students sign up for the PSAT, and I'm not trying to implicate College Board, but your students got on their mailing list, and so they're getting all kinds of communications. So one other thing that will happen about 30 seconds after your student hits submit on that first application, even in August, they're going to get a reminder email, and you'll probably get it also, saying, hey, you haven't submitted your transcript yet. And all that's going to do is make you panic, your student panic, and then there's going to be lots of continued panic because the clerical department is here, and here some days, and out some days, and then the counselors come back. Those emails, please take them with a grain of salt. I promise you, we will meet your students' deadlines. Yes. One more question, yes?
This is related to the COVID question. Is there anything that comes from the school or on a transcript to say that they were hybrid freshman year and like explain that, or do we have?
Absolutely. We report, so we have a school profile, and it's actually public. You can see this year's on our website right now. And we talk about what that looked like during that year, 2019-2020, that we were hybrid, that the fourth quarter grades were passed. Students here in the fourth quarter earned a pass. So yes, we do explain that. So, sure.
I just want to say that, as I keep saying, like, this can be a very overwhelming process, and I know we gave out a lot of information. A lot of the stuff that we went over today, the technical stuff, you do not have to worry about right now, okay? We want you to just focus really on, you know, the SAT, ACT, we're starting to research colleges, go on to Naviance. This technical stuff is not important right this second. So please rest assured, we will talk to you all about this again during our individual junior conferences. There will be many opportunities. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed now, please don't. We are here to help you throughout this process, and there'll be many opportunities to go over this again.
And that's a perfect segue. We have Mr. Tom Ellis here tonight, and he's going to talk about Methodize, and it's all about ACT and SAT. And I would definitely urge you all to stay, because he really has the inside scoop. So let's,
And for those of you who are at home, let me just segue into Mr. Tom Ehlers from Methodize, who has generously joined us. To you.
Hi, everyone. All right, everybody's favorite topic, SAT. So I have a lot to share, but I will be concise. I'll cover things about test optional, the digital SAT and ACT, and just everything you need to know about TML. So if you're going to listen to me talk for a few minutes, I want you to know a little bit about my background. So I grew up right here on Long Island. I went to Bayshore High School. I actually taught 5th grade here one year. I taught management. That was a long time ago. But my parents spent their whole careers as teachers, and they said, you know, Tom, we have a lot of students here not doing well in SAT and ACT. Maybe you could help. This was back in 1998. So I started tutoring for the SAT and ACT, and what I found within 2 seconds were students were scoring so far below their potential. They had no idea how to handle the timing aspect of the test. They had no idea really even what was on the exam. So I would work with the student. At the end of the hour, the student would say thank you. The parent would say thank you. The parent would say, would you like a chicken cutlet Parmesan Hero? I was like, yes, please. Once they started offering me chocolate chip cookies, I said, that's it. I'm going to do this all day, every day. And I just started tutoring, driving around Long Island like a lunatic, tutoring all day, every day. And students were increasing their scores a significant amount. When I say significant, going up 150 to 200 points. And it's because they were taking this test without any clue what they were doing. And then the business just grew from there. And by the way, I can empathize everybody. My wife and I have twin 8th graders now. This picture's a little old. So everything I share tonight is going to be, it's going to be realistic. I'm a parent myself. I know what we can ask kids to do, what we can't ask them to do. There's my wife Allison. She's New York City Board of Ed speech pathologist, and our daughter Julia. So again, my son and my daughter are in 8th grade, so I'll be going through this in a couple of years as well. So this past year was the most competitive year ever in college admissions. You probably heard some of that tonight. What I mean by that, so these stats are kind of shocking to a lot of people. I purposely left off Ivy League schools, but you can see that for this past spring, the acceptance rates, you see a school like Northeastern, 7%, Northwestern, 7%, voted 9%. So we all know how competitive college has gotten, but I think it's surprising to see some of these numbers, right? And so this past year was the most competitive year ever. And so this slide is also pretty, again, pretty dramatic, right? So in a 2-year span, now this was a group of 40 selective colleges and universities. They received an additional 400,000 applications, right? So, and of course they can't admit any more students. So the admit rate went down by 26%. So it's gotten very, very competitive. I think many of you understand that already, but it's just good to see some statistics and data. College admissions officers are feeling completely overwhelmed, right? They're swimming in applications, partly because they're test optional, partly because of the Common App. And so they're saying things like, we have no idea how to differentiate between students, right? Grade inflation is rampant. Everybody's got a 4.0, so it's pretty difficult to decide who to accept and who not to accept and how a student's going to stand out. So when people talk about test optional, do you have to prepare for the SAT, ACT, or will that make a difference? And colleges will say that it doesn't make a difference, right? But I was on a webinar with a college admissions officer, and the person said, anything that a college says is optional, if you're serious about going to that college, you do that thing, right? So if they say that you can have a 3rd letter of recommendation, that's optional, you want the 3rd letter of recommendation. If they say that there's an optional essay, you make sure you write the essay. And if they say test scores are optional, you make sure to have as strong test scores as possible. And it seems that from the data, there is a submitter advantage. Students who are submitting strong test scores have a greater chance of being accepted. So this is a chart with just a number of selected colleges. And we'll use Emory as an example. Right, so for students who applied to Emory with test scores, 17% were accepted. For students who applied to Emory without test scores, only 9% were accepted. So a student was almost twice as likely to be accepted if they submitted test scores. So I don't want to spend too much more time on this, everyone, because I know everyone's been here a long time, but the obvious advice is, if you're serious about going to a selective college, you want to do everything you can to stand out. And one thing you can do is score as well as possible on the SAT and ACT. And we'll talk about some strategies for doing so in a second. This was a slide from the College Board, that there were 1.3 million students who had SAT scores that confirmed or exceeded their high school GPA. Right, so their SAT score, or their ACT score, confirmed what their high school transcript showed. And then, of course, this is the other big piece, right? Not only do students have a greater chance of being accepted, but they have a greater chance of earning a larger academic merit aid package. So it's very likely that a student who scores higher on the SAT or ACT will be offered a more generous package from colleges and universities. Of course, there are a number of schools that require the SAT or ACT, Florida universities, Georgia, Georgia Tech, MIT. Georgetown and now Purdue just said that they're going to require the exam, require test scores. And of course, these test students on skills are going to need for the rest of their lives anyway, right? So that's one thing I always loved about my job. I was helping kids with basic grammar, basic math, basic reading comprehension. And students can and will be successful on these exams. So our goal tonight is very straightforward. We want to use higher test scores to get accepted to more colleges and to earn more money in academic merit. And so these are very achievable goals and they're very important goals. So I always say, if you only remember one thing from this presentation, I wanted to do this. These tests are very predictable. They literally test students on the same information over and over again. So because they're so predictable, it makes sense to prepare. Right? If we didn't know what to expect, then it would not make sense to prepare. But we know exactly what students are going to test on. These tests are so redundant, they're repetitive, and so students can make an enormous difference in their score. So this is a really interesting statistic, and this is when I start to get the students' attention, is if a student gets just one more question correct on the SAT, how many points does his or her score often go up by? And the answer is 10 points. So think about that for a second. If a student just gets 5 more math questions, 5 more grammar questions, and 5 more reading questions, that's a 150-point improvement on their score. Just from getting 5 math, 5 grammar, 5 reading. And I'm very passionate, very confident that every single Port Washington student can do that. Every student can go up 150 points. Of course, if you go up 150 points, you're going to get accepted to more colleges, and you're going to get a larger academic merited package. So when I share this with students, I can see their attitudes start to change. They start to become more confident, more optimistic, more motivated that they can make a big difference on their score. So as far as national averages, on the ACT, the maximum score is 36. The national average is a 21. On the SAT, the maximum score is a 1600, and the national average is about a 1060. And I said a moment ago that the national average on the ACT is a 21. Unfortunately, and this is partly due to COVID, the national average has gone down to a 19.8. So that's the lowest average that the ACT has had in the last 30 years. So anyway, I just like to share that because our Long Island families, everyone on Long Island wants to score 30 or above on the ACT, and I think that's a great goal. And it's an achievable goal for a lot of students. But if you score a 27 or 28, that's still an incredible score. That's still well above average, okay? As far as what's a good score, obviously good is a relative term, and as it was said earlier, you want to look at the schools you're interested in and see what the average test scores are for those schools. So what would I do if I had an 11th grader? What would I do if I was in 11th grade? So this next slide, this is a really important slide. You may want to take a screenshot of this. So there are certain SATs and certain ACTs where you can pay an extra $20 and the College Board or the ACT will send that score back to you. So you can see which questions you had right and wrong. You can see correct answers, incorrect answers. So I want to make sure I'm explaining this well. On the SAT, this is called the question and answer service, and it's only offered 3 times throughout the year. So it's offered in March, and May, and October. That's why every 11th grader in the country should take the March SAT. And when you register for the March SAT, you check a box that says question and answer service. And they charge you an extra $20, but then you can actually see the questions you're getting wrong. So a student can learn from their mistakes. And it's an incredibly valuable service. And I've been doing this now, as I said, for 24 years. 95% of the families I talked to were not aware of this service. They didn't know that this exists. So the way I like to explain it is, imagine taking a 4-hour exam, getting a score you're not completely satisfied with. No one tells you what you did wrong. And then somebody says, take that exam again. Well, that's absurd. Why would I take the exam again when I don't know what I did wrong the first time? So the good news is that there's a better way. And the better way is to take the March SAT and order this service. And take the SAT possibly again in May, so you can order this service again. And then, obviously, the ACT offers the same service. They call theirs the TIR, stands for Test Information Release. And they offer the TIR December, April, and June. So all of the families that we were working with, we encouraged them all to take the ACT this past Saturday. Let me just see a show of hands. Anybody here started to take the ACT this past Saturday? Okay, and did you order the TIR service? You still can. You still can. So yeah. So the nice thing is you can still go back and order this service after the fact, and that same goes for the SAT too. So all you need to do is go onto the ACT website and just say, I want the TIR, the Test Information Release, and you can get that service. And listen, I know that it was, everyone's come back to the school at night, it's been a long presentation, and it's a shame how many people had to leave. Please spread the word to other families that there is an efficient, more intelligent way to prepare for these exams, and that is to order these services so you can see what you're doing wrong. And hopefully there's a lot of folks who are watching from home or watch this recording. Does anybody have a question about the question and answer service or the TIR service? Does anybody have a question about anything I've shared so far? Yes. Great question. So the question is, if you take the test more than one time, can you mix and match? And the answer is yes. The term is called super scoring. And all that means is you can mix and match your best scores. When you're applying to college, you can submit your best SAT math and then your best SAT reading and writing. So if your son were to take the SAT multiple times, on one test score higher on the math, another test score on the reading and writing, he can mix and match those scores. Yes. Yep. And the same goes, for the ACT. Of course, you can't mix and match between the SAT and the ACT. Now, of course, my job is to help your son score as high as possible in the most efficient way. I don't want him to have to take the test 3 or 4 times. So, has he taken the SAT yet? Yeah. And he's only a junior? Okay, maybe you and I should talk afterwards. I don't want him to have to take the test too many more times. There should be a more efficient way for him to do this, see what he's doing wrong. But they don't really care. So I don't want people to worry about being penalized for a low score. They just care about the best scores, because of course that makes them look better. Helps them look better. So good question. Yes, you can mix and match scores. Yes. Yeah, good news. On the ACT, each additional question you get correct often results in a 1-point increase on that part of the ACT. So the way I like to explain it to students is, if you just get 3 more right on each part of the ACT, so 3 more English, which is essentially grammar, 3 more grammar, 3 more math, 3 more reading, 3 more science, that's a 3-point increase on your ACT score, which is a very significant increase. So good question. That's my goal, is to help every student go 3 to 4 points on the ACT. Do you have a follow-up question to that? Question? Great question. Do you get the same report for the PSAT? So on certain PSATs you do, certain you don't. Do you know here if they got the full report? Yeah. Yeah. So it's a good question. Certain PSATs you do and certain you don't. So what I would do is log into the College Board account and click on the PSAT and then see if you can go question by question. Now, I should say, everybody, people say to me, Tom, is there a way to get some of this information earlier than March? And the good news is the answer is yes. So earlier we had the Methodize slide up with the QR code. So essentially, we were doing a tremendous amount of private tutoring, and we were teaching a lot of classes, and we were helping a lot of students with their scoring. We said there's got to be a way to make this available online. We created a web-based program, self-paced. Students who use Methodize go up 150 points, and we have 2 full-length practice SATs on there. So when a student uses Methodize, they take a full-length exam and they can see each question they got right and wrong. So the good news is it your son or your daughter? Your daughter. She doesn't have to wait for March. She can take a test on Methodize and see where she stands. Also, I brought these books, everybody. This is the only book you would ever buy for the SAT. It's the College Board book. It's a large book with a blue cover. So if you just go to Amazon or go to Barnes & Noble and you just type in the official SAT study guide, this is the book that'll come up. This is the only book you should ever buy, and a student can take a test in here, and then that functions as a question and answer service. So good question. And then I'll just hold up everybody. There's only one book you would ever buy for the ACT. It's just a large book with a red cover, and it says the official ACT prep guide, 2022-2023. So this is the only book you buy for the ACT because it's the only official exams. All right, good questions. Yes? So from different merit scholarships, it's only the 11th grade PSAT. There's something called the National Merit Scholarship Program. That is, it's just based on your 11th grade PSAT. Yes, it's different for every state. And of course, in New York, it's very competitive. For this year, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not, yeah. I will say that I scored very well on the PSAT here in New York. I didn't get a National Merit Scholarship. I think I was a combination or something like that. But so people get really caught up on that scholarship. And I want students trying to achieve that scholarship. It's a great goal. But what's much more common is a student gets a larger academic package, merited package, based on their SAT scores or the ACT scores, right? So a lot of times a school will say, listen, you're accepted here, but if you score a little better on the SAT or ACT, we can give you a little bit more of a generous financial package, right? And again, colleges call it scholarships or grants or merit aid or need-based aid. At the end of the day, they can call it whatever they want. They want to entice stronger students to come. And so they want to entice students with stronger scores to come. So they will use money to entice students with stronger scores. So it comes down more to SAT scores as far as the scholarship money. Does that make sense? Good question. Yes? Yeah, great question. So how do we decide between whether the SAT or the ACT is going to be the better test? So the fact is about 70% of students score about the same on the SAT and the ACT. So for most students, it doesn't matter if they focus on the SAT or the ACT. They're going to score about the same. But for about 30% of students, they'll score a little higher on one test over the other. So my advice, my recommendation is take each test officially once. Many students have surprised me. I thought they were going to score higher on one, and ended up scoring higher on the other. So every college in the country accepts either test. Right? Every college in the country says, give us your SAT or ACT, we really don't care, whichever you do better on. So I like to say colleges are giving students 2 chances to be successful. You might as well take advantage of both chances. You might as well take the SAT once and the ACT once. I wouldn't take both tests twice. I would take each test once, and I would take one of the tests a second time. Now, for a student to get an idea of which test they score better on, they can use Methodize, because we have a diagnostic for each test, and then they can also take a full-length exam in the blue book and a full-length exam in the red book. So great question. Any other questions? Okay, I'll just have a few more minutes. Yeah. Yeah, great question. The good news is, thankfully, yes. Preparing for one test helps you on both tests. So the 2 exams test students on the same grammar, right? It's the same grammar concepts. There's so much overlap on the math. The math concepts are by and large the same. And then reading comprehension is reading comprehension. The strategies are very similar. So the answer is yes. When you're preparing for one test, you're really preparing for both. Thank goodness. And yeah, these books are enormous. They're intimidating. I always tell students, the goal is to get through as many questions in the 2 books as possible. Probably not going to get through them all, but even if you get through half of them or a quarter of them, you'll be much better prepared. And I was working with a student this afternoon, and we were just flying through some of the questions on Methodize, and in like an hour, we got through 30 or 40 questions, right? So in just 1 hour, that student is much better prepared for the SAT. So everything in our Methodize program, again, Paul Washington pays for every student. Everything in that program is in 5-minute increments, so students don't have to sit for hours on end. Okay, like I said, I'll try to move quickly, a few more minutes. I know you all have been here a long time. Oh, these are the test dates. You can Google this, but it's just nice to see that there are many test dates coming up. So the ACT, there's a test in February, April, June, July. And then for the SAT, there's an test in March, and May, and June, as we described. So each exam is given 7 times throughout the year. Okay, I'm going to skip this, the 10th grade stuff, digital SAT, we don't need to talk about. So at this point, people say, okay, well, what's the next step? How can I improve my score most efficiently? And so I actually tried the QR code earlier, even from the back, and it worked fine. So I would encourage everybody to, click on this QR code and set up an account for your child. Because again, the district's already paying for my program. Students who use Methodize increase their SAT score 150 points on average, and increase their ACT score 3 points on average. So the program is highly effective. We know it works. We've known it works for a long time now. This is what the students' SAT home screen looks like. So students can see how much work they've done, how well they've performed, and they can just follow the green button. The program is very intuitive. There's no training necessary, very easy to use. Every lesson has an audio component. You can see at the top, play audio. So students none of us learn best by just reading words off the screen. So students are listening to the teacher walk them through the strategies. Every trick, every strategy, every technique is part of the program. And again, students are listening to the teacher. Then they're presented with a practice problem. They're given immediate feedback. And then they're presented with a video explanation, where they're listening and watching a teacher walk them through exactly how to solve the question. And the teacher saying things like, if you ever see a question like this is how you handle this type of question. These are the underlying strategies, these are the underlying techniques, these are the underlying concepts. We have over 4,500 of these video explanations, so I always smile when I say that. Most students are not going to get through 4,500, but imagine if you just get through 5 or 10 or 20 videos. If you get through 5 or 10 or 20 videos, that's a 50 or 100 or 200 point increase on your score. Okay, just from watching some of these video explanations. We do have a diagnostic, as I mentioned earlier, an SAT evaluation, an ACT evaluation, so students can get a quick sense of where they score and which test they would score better on. And then we have full-length exams as well. So 2 full-length SATs, 2 full-length ACTs. So students can take 4 full-length practice exams inside of Methodize. We have a vocabulary builder. The program is keeping a personal word list for every Schreiber student, so students can improve their vocabulary very efficiently. Right? This program can be accessed from any device, a phone, a tablet, laptop, so a student can improve their vocabulary just right from their phone, quizzing themselves on a few words. And they can see the words they've missed and the words they've mastered. Okay, so again, this is the QR code. I'll leave this up for a moment. Does anybody else have a question? Yes? Good question. So will Methodize see where the student got wrong and then make suggestions? The answer is yes. So basically students can see all the concepts. They can see how well they've scored on each concept, and then those concepts where they're lower, they can click on those concepts and work on both problems. Any other questions? So most families say to us, hey, the Methodize program looks great, we're using it. We'd also like some time with a live instructor, either in a group format or a private format. So we offer many class, private tutoring options at methodlearning.com. So our website is methodlearning.com, and we do a tremendous amount of one-on-one tutoring, both in person and online, plus online, and we also offer group classes, both in person and online. We, right now, we are actually running a really discounted special, $75 an hour for private tutoring. So feel free to reach out to us. You can grab our number right from the web, or and find us very easily at Method Learning. So those are the three ways that we help families. Number one, use Methodize. Number two, take one of our classes. And number three, private tutoring. As far as the classes that we offer, the group classes, we do have a discount code for any Port Washington family, and the discount code is very easy to remember. It's just 100 off. So 100 OFF. So for any of our group classes, put in that code, and you'll save $100 off the cost of that class. And yes, this QR code will take you right to our list of power classes. The power classes are our review classes. Anytime there's an SAT or ACT, obviously it's given on Saturday, our power classes run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday leading up to that exam. So the 4 nights leading up to that exam, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, students take this review class. The instructor is amazing. His name is Evan. He's been teaching these classes for years, and the feedback from students is very positive. And that talks about Evan for a second, but and then this is a QR code for our Advantage classes. These are longer form classes. So for a more comprehensive class, where it meets like once or twice a week for 4 or 5 weeks. So sort of more of a traditional comprehensive class. So thanks everybody. I'm gonna stick around. Does anybody have a question or two? Question before we go? I know I shared a lot of information. And again, we're all so busy. Please share this information with other Port families. A lot of families probably wanted to be here tonight, couldn't be here, but things like the question and answer service, the TIR service, these can make an enormous difference on a student's score. The fact that every question is 10 more points, that type of stuff. Yeah. So actually, and that's an old discount code. You can just use the 100 off. But there's our phone number and there's our email, in case you want to take a picture of that. Yes? Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stick around. Have a good night and reach out if we can help in any way.